Hello, welcome to the Wildline podcast. I'm your host, Dan. This is a podcast about movies and how much money they make at the box office. So I'm a little bit later than usual this week. It's been a busy sort of end and start of a new week. So I'm doing this on Tuesday night. Might be able to post it tonight. Might post it tomorrow on Wednesday. And that would be close to be doing my preview special. So I might just do the preview special and tack it on tonight. In any event, let's walk through last weekend's top 10. And sort of, I vaguely remember what I predicted. I guess I could look it up. I put it on SoundCloud or wherever I put it. But I was not great, I would say. I got Mother right. I think I got American Assassin decently close. I think I said about 15.7. Is about $1 million off of that. I definitely got It wrong. So let's start with It. So It in its second weekend, September 15th to the 17th weekend, I said it was going to do about 52. It ended up doing 60 million. A 51% drop. Actually added 45 screens on its second weekend. I guess it did so incredibly well its first weekend that they wanted to make some more money. Per theater average in its second weekend was $15,000 per theater. Total take so far was $218 million. So what is the story here, right? So going into this last weekend, I had made two assumptions. One, that it was an event film. It's the biggest rated R, second biggest rated R opening ever, I believe. By far the biggest rated R horror movie opening ever. I don't know if anything's going to beat it in the foreseeable future, even like the next decade. And it's hard to predict, but this is just such a huge outlier. And I did a whole podcast about how important this opening was. I thought it was going to be one of those movies where everybody rushed out to see it the first opening weekend, and then kind of like everybody got that out of their system, and then the second weekend would be significantly less. It felt like a big tentpole, huge hype weekend, and then I thought it was going to fall off pretty significantly on its second weekend. I was wrong. I also thought that it was going to drop more than even a normal blockbuster because it was a horror movie. Horror movies in general have pretty poor drops, which is what I mean by that is their drops are, a normal movie, let's say, is about 50%. Horror movies are usually mid 50s, 60s sometimes, even sometimes up to 70% drops. So with this one, it only dropped 51% overall, which is really, really, really good. Like I can't, obviously if it was below 50, it would be even better. But the fact that it hit 51% is a marker that this film isn't going to go away. It is not a movie that people went to go see opening weekend and said, okay, I've done that, whatever. This is permeating out through culture. So the hype has gotten to the point where everybody feels like, or a large portion of the population feels like they need to see it. And this is where a big movie like Batman versus Superman, that didn't happen, right? Batman versus Superman opened pretty big. I don't think it opened as much as they had anticipated, but then it quickly fell apart, mostly due to quality issues. It was not a very good movie. Objectively, it just was not a good movie. I think it's one of the worst. It was one of the worst blockbusters I've ever seen, to be honest with you. But I don't really pull my punches when it comes to comic book movie criticism. So you guys probably know that. It is not going to be that model. It's not just this thing that people got really excited about. The weird thing about meme culture and social media and word of mouth nowadays is it tends to have a very quick life cycle. Memes are becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. A meme exists sometimes just for a few days and then it disappears. And now this feels like it's a little bit different than sort of a meme hype thing going on, right? This is like a more traditional breakout film. So, if you're trying to figure out, what is this thing going to do at the end of the day? It did $123 million its opening weekend. It did $60 million its second weekend. I'm thinking, the fact that it didn't drop that much this weekend suggests to me that it's going to play for a long time. Although there is a lot of competition. Like, we are in the sort of starting the glut of the autumn movie season into the holiday movie season. And it is pretty much nonstop until you get to January. That's our next real break here. So it's got stiff competition. If it did something crazy like 3X, its opening weekend, you're looking at $370 million. That feels, I'm not comfortable with that yet. That feels a little bit too high to me. I just don't see a 3X multiplier for this, but if it's dropping 50% like it is, it could be possible. It's really going to depend more on, because this weekend was pretty quiet. You only had American Assassin, which was a smaller film, smaller wide release. And then you had Mother, which is also a smaller wide release that was actually really an art film. So it didn't really have a ton of competition last weekend. This weekend, you got the Kingsman sequel. I forgot what else is coming out. You have, oh my God, the Lego Ninja movie's coming out. What? How is that coming out already? So you have crazy competition going this weekend. I mean, when's the last time we had two huge movies like that open? It's probably been since July. That's how long it's been. And they just had Friend Request opening, which is just, I think, was released in Germany like last year, and now they're just throwing it out there. I have no idea what that's going to do. Probably not very well. We'll talk about those later. So it's got some pretty stiff competition. 3X might be a little tough for this, but it's an event film at this point, and its hype has started to feed back on itself, and so that's when it becomes like a cultural sort of, I don't want to say icon, but almost like a cultural movement that isn't going to just dissipate in a couple of weeks. So I think, most optimistically, I would say a 370. I would guess probably something more in maybe like a 2.7 range for its multiplier. And that would put it at like 332. I'm going to say something like about 340. I could be totally wrong. This thing could just keep playing and playing and playing. Obviously we had examples of that this summer with Wonder Woman, which I think is either passed or approached a 4X multiplier, 4X multiplier, well into $400 million. It's actually at 411 now. Yeah, it must be getting really close to 4X because I think it opened at 103. I don't think it's going to play like that, of course, because that was so much of an outlier. But you never know. You just never know. It has broken so many rules already. It wouldn't surprise me that much if it somehow did like 3.5x. But my gut says it's going to do about 2.7, a little bit higher, maybe 2.8. So I want to put it at, my guess is probably about 340 domestically. Internationally, I haven't been following it too close internationally. It's made 153 internationally so far. Let's see what kind of markets we got here. It's open in quite a few markets. The biggest ones being Australia has about 11 million. United Kingdom has about 13 million. Russia, it's got about 7 million. So I'm picking up some cash there. I have no idea what the breakdown's going to be on that. I have no clue. But if you just go by averages, let's say it does 340, you're probably looking like, at least 700 million worldwide, probably even a little bit higher than that. Let's say it does like maybe 45%. So you're looking at 755, would be the total, internationally, which is not bad, which is amazing. It's absolutely fucking amazing. It's not $1 billion movie, but it's, I just don't see it doing that well internationally. It's not like normal breakdown is like what, like 50-50 sometimes, but it's becoming almost the norms, almost like 45-55. But for some comic book movies or like even like Furious 7, it's like crazy outbalanced towards the foreign markets. But I would say, just conjecture 340 million domestically. I'll say like 725 internationally. Wait, so that does make it $1 billion. Why am I like, I can't add numbers? Apparently it is $1 billion film. In any event, so it was number one. Its drop was very good. Seems like it's going to play well for the next few weeks. There's not enough amazing things you could say about it. It is an absolute outlier. It will change the horror genre. And there's a lot to talk about it as we sort of follow it over the next few weeks. Number two this weekend was American Assassin, a new wide opener based on a series of books, kind of like Jason Bourne-esque, but with more like a sort of anti-terrorist, anti-ISIS sort of plot point, or I guess universe, if you will. 14.8 million, almost $15 million for the weekend. These are actuals, by the way, not estimates. So 15 million essentially. Per theater average was 4,700. That's kind of what I thought it was going to do. I said it was going to like get bumped up a little bit more. I felt like the trailers were well done enough that we get a certain type of audience into the seats. Mostly like males under 25, I would say would probably be that quad. But it did okay. It certainly didn't break out. Certainly didn't really flop all that much. Its budget was only $33 million. Compared to it sounds like a total failure. But in general, $33 million budget, opening at 15 million is not terrible. I think the legs will be decent on it. It's at what, 14.8 now, so 3x would be $44 million. I feel like that's doable. I feel like it, because it's opened, I think a little bit depressed because it's doing so well. I feel like its multiplier might be a little bit naturally higher. So I would say probably about $45 million it could make. I don't see it like really dropping off that much. Audiences seem to like it. I was pretty much right on like, I gotta check the Rotten Tomato score just to say I'm not talking out of my ass. But I thought the audiences would connect with it. But the critics did not. So 35% on Rotten Tomatoes, 71% on the audience score. So I was right about that. Like, there's no way the critics are gonna like a film like this unless it was very, very well done, and it clearly was not. It's just like a throwaway action movie, right? But audiences, I like throwaway action movies. Like, I would probably say if I went to go see this, if it's decent, like I'd probably say I liked it. So it's one of those things where critics don't give it any slack and audiences give it a ton of slack to kind of do whatever it wants to do. Along with like comedies are pretty similar with that too. So 15 million about. Hopefully it gets to 45 million to sort of be, I don't know what would be successful for this. And I don't know if there's really a big international market for this at all. Just because the plot seems to be so heavily pro-American, I guess. I don't know. I'm making this up because I haven't seen it yet. But it's not like a movie you're going to be able to play. It's called American Assassin, for Christ's sakes. I mean, you're not going to be able to play it in Saudi Arabia. In any event, so that did pretty well. I would call that performance, if we're using baseball metaphors, I would say like a standing, not really a double. I'm going to say like a single, like, you know, kind of bloop fly ball that drops right in front of the right fielder. So decent performance. Definitely not a strikeout. But there was a strikeout this weekend, and I called this, and it actually did worse than my very negative projections. Mother, the Darren Aronofsky film, starring Jennifer Lawrence, Javier Bardem, Ed Harris, Michelle Pfeiffer. A very strange movie. Even when it was on paper, I was like, this is odd. Especially Jennifer Lawrence and Darren Aronofsky. I don't know. It just didn't seem like it seemed interesting enough for me to be really kind of excited about it. Cause I was like, this is weird. Like, what is this? I've heard nothing about it. And then it's coming out in September. So I immediately invested on Hollywood Stock Exchange, and now I hate myself for doing that. Although it's a small film, you know, it wasn't meant to be a huge blockbuster. A lot of mistakes were made here, folks. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. I actually was so excited about this film, and not even just necessarily from the artistic perspective, but from the business perspective, that I had to go see it this weekend. So I did. It is, and I knew going in what it was about. I knew what the allegory was about. It's not just a straightforward horror film. In fact, I don't think it makes any sense to see this movie unless you know exactly the story that he's trying to retell here. I mean, if you pay attention, you'll pick it up pretty easily. But you're gonna miss about half of it unless you really know that going in. So I don't know why they made it seem like it was so secretive, and a huge miss marketing here by Paramount, disastrously so. And we can tell that, and that's measurable by the fact that its CinemScore is an F. Now let's talk a little bit about what that means, right? CinemScore has been going on. It's a survey that is sent out, or collected at movie theaters. Now it's the Thursday night previews. I think they go out, and the Friday. They go out to movie theaters. This is really old fashioned. They have a person with a survey and they fill it out, right? I'm sure it's done by computers, but there's a person there to sort of do the survey. I know that because I've seen the job listings. I actually thought about doing it for fun. In any event, so it's a pretty old school survey that's been around for a long time. There's a lot of problems with it that I have gone over pretty exhaustively on this podcast. There seems to be a strange discrepancy between what CinemaScore gives it and things like Rotten Tomatoes audience score, which of course can be gamed, like the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. It's just sometimes the cinema scores just don't make any sense compared to what it's doing business wise, and what audiences have measured it on other forums. So it has a lot of problems. The first thing that you got to realize about CinemaScore is that it is weighted positively. So the people that they're asking are going to see this movie opening night or opening day. So they are very hyped to see it. Those types of people tend to skew towards the positive in terms of their reaction to the film, right? If you asked me how I thought about Garden State the day that I saw it, which I think was the opening Friday, like probably the first 7 p.m. show that was on, and if you gave me a survey when I walked out, I would have said, oh man, it was so cool. Like, I'm so glad I came to see it opening night, A-. If you asked me now, I would say C-. Like, there's just an inherent hypeness and flaw. It's not necessarily a flaw, it's a skew that happens when they measure people on CinemaScore, just because they're the type of people who are already inclined to really enjoy and love the film. And so, when they measure something, CinemaScore has been around forever. It has its problems, but it's a really, really good set of data because they've been asking essentially the same questions for about 40 years, just about 40 years. They started in 1978. So it's really been around forever. American Assassin got a B+. In terms of the overall, the way to think about this, it does sort of change depending on the type of film that you're talking about, what their grade really means, and how you can extrapolate upon it, or extrapolate on it, I should say. American Assassin with a B+, I would say that that's decent. You would definitely want it to be A-. A pluses are very, very rare. I think Hidden Figures was the last A+. A B+ suggests to me, all right, kind of a decent performance. If it was B, I'd be like, might have a little tough in the legs department. Anything below a B in general is bad, usually pretty bad. Terrible movies essentially will get like a C, which doesn't sound bad, but it's actually terrible. Getting a D is like a death sentence. Fs are very rare. Since I guess 1978. I don't know. I kind of have trouble with some of these figures. Like people have been talking about Mother because it got an F. They've been doing a lot of like articles. Oh, there's been 12 movies with an F. Oh, but someone says there's 19 movies with an F. I'm not really sure that we have a final number, but there's probably less than 20 movies that have ever been scored by CinemaScore that have gotten an F. So it is an incredibly very rare moment. And it doesn't always necessarily suggest that the film is awful. A movie like Wolf Creek got an F. I saw that, I think, in the first week or two. I would have scored it in the mid-70s. It was kind of a cool horror thriller. But the issue with CinemaScore, and sometimes there's just terrible movies that get Fs, right? The Lindsay Lohan movie, I Know Who Killed Me, I think it came out in 2007. That train wreck of a movie that got an F at CinemaScore. So sometimes it is a sort of accurate judgment on the artistic quality of the film, but usually it's not. Killing Them Softly also got an F, and I don't think that really deserved it. The Box got an F. That certainly didn't deserve it. The Box wasn't a great movie, but it certainly was absolutely entertaining and fascinating. Totally bonkers. Richard Kelly's a nut job. Love him. He needs to make fucking another Donnie Darko. In any event, so those two movies got Fs. But in this case with Mother, what really happened? Is the movie that bad? Absolutely not. In terms of all overall film, I can tell you that it got a 70 something on 68, just below fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Metacritic, I believe it last time I checked was a 74. I'm gonna double check again so I'm not giving out false information. Critics kind of liked it because they get it. They get what he was going for. Yeah, it's a 74 on Metacritic. They get what he was going for. They understand the analogy, the allegory, the metaphor. They got it right away. They probably knew it going into it. So they gave it a little bit more of some leeway. Audience score, obviously CinemaScore is an F. On Rotten Tomatoes is a 42%, which is terrible. It was, I think, kind of a disaster, right? And the reason I say it's a disaster, I say that from a business perspective, and I think also a studio perspective, and also a career perspective for the people involved, especially Jennifer Lawrence. She is the lead in the film. She is in basically every scene, and Darren Aronofsky really, really puts her through the ringer, and the results are not great, especially at the end. So what happened here? Let's talk about what happened. So this was marketed as a sort of psychological thriller. When the teaser trailer first dropped, it seemed like a very arty home invasion film, almost like Strangers or something like that. That didn't really make a ton of sense because Darren Aronofsky he's not really a genre filmmaker, right? He's a very artistic filmmaker. He's very out there, right? He always has been. Ever since he first put out Pi, which I think he made for like $100,000. It's just an awesome movie. Requiem, which is a classic. The Wrestler, which I think is his greatest film. But he definitely likes to go out in outer space sometimes, like in The Fountain, where he just goes kind of like, I don't know. He seemed a little bit nuts, to be honest with you, when he's making that film. But that's sort of what it takes. You need to be experimental. You need to have a unique vision and a unique voice to make great art. I mean, that's just the reality. Nobody makes great art by being conservative. It just doesn't work that way. You can't do it. And I think Mother is an example of a film where his experimentation and his hubris and his ambition hurt the art in a very, very real way. And I say this as someone who loved the first hour of this film. The first hour of this film is fantastic. It's like a play. Michelle Pfeiffer, Ed Harris, Jennifer Lawrence, and Javier are just amazing. I could have sat there and watched them sort of like navigate each other for like 2 hours at least. The last third of the film basically is one of the biggest artistic meltdowns I've ever seen in my life on screen. I mean, it's unbelievably terrible in every sense of the word. And I say that as somebody who likes art films, who likes experimental films, who likes movies that take chances. This is the exact opposite of that. The ending is what you would call artistic masturbation. It's somebody who has very little self-awareness. You cannot make great art unless you're self-aware. Like, you can't make great art unless you're experimental, but you also can't make it unless you're self-aware. And you have to know how your audience is going to view your work on some level. You have to be able to see that. You have to have sort of like very extreme empathy for your audience on some level. And Darren Aronofsky doesn't, at least here in this film. And so what ended up happening is it was marketed as this psychological thriller with a huge, basically the biggest movie star in the world, Jennifer Lawrence. As we got closer towards the movie coming out, it seemed a little bit more like horror. Okay, this is a little bit kind of stranger than we thought it was. It's not just like a straightforward sort of psychological thriller horror movie. It seemed to have some maybe even gore aspects to it, and I don't know how to say torture porn, but it almost felt like that a little bit. Like, what was going on with this? Nothing can prepare you to actually seeing it in the theater. Like, honestly, if you're just interested in film at all, or you're interested in, I don't know, if you're just fascinated by filmmakers really going for it and doing something different, I would recommend you see this film. But you have to go into it with a very, very open mind. That's how I approached it. Despite the fact that I think it's not a great film, I really agree with that Rotten Tomato score. I would say about 65% out of 100 is what I would give it personally. It was worth seeing because it is so batshit crazy, especially the last 30 minutes, that you just can't even believe what you just saw on the screen. It just like, it is one of the most shocking things I've ever seen in my life. And that's why it got a CinemScore of F, right? So it was an art film. The Mother is an art film by an art film director, or an art house director, I should say. This should never have been marketed as a mass market product. It literally makes no sense to market this as a wide release on any level. Now, there's all these arguments that went back and forth over the weekend. I called that it was going to get a CinemScore of F like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I probably said it on this podcast, and I was right. And the reason I knew that was going to happen is because I had heard about the last section of the film and what happens. And it is very horrific, and it is very unnerving and disgusting. But as someone who's a lover of the art form, I enjoyed seeing it and thought it was an interesting thing to watch. Most people are not like that. And I'm not saying that because I'm a snob or an elitist. I am. But this type of film is not meant for about 80% of the US population. I'll put it to you that way. Like 20%, I think can handle it and enjoy it. Most Americans just don't want to see something like this, and that's okay. Like, look, there's a lot of things. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not really sort of judging them. If I don't really like watching NASCAR. I don't really like watching the NBA. Like, I don't. Everybody's got their own interests. But this was an art film made for cinema lovers, people who love the art form of film. And Paramount made just an unbelievably massive mistake here. And you're thinking, oh, there's not a lot of money in play, so it's not going to be that big of a deal. Fuck that. Like, you have Darren Aronofsky, who is Aronofsky. I always feel like, is it Aronofsky? I'm just going to say it how I'm going to say it. I'm gonna let me be me here. Darren Aronofsky. That's how I'm going to say it. He is in a troubled spot now. He really hurt his career with this. And I don't think it was necessarily a bad artistic decision. It was a very, very bad business decision on his part. He had Noah. Noah was not a good film, I think most people would say. I wonder what that got on CinemaScore. Probably not very high. That was his big budget movie. Got a C on CinemaScore, which is terrible, which is basically like a normal F. On a normal scale, a C is basically failing on CinemaScore. So his last two films have been extremely negatively received by audiences. He did great with Black Swan. The Fountain, I think, was a kind of a miss for him. Not even kind of a miss. It was a big miss for him. Even among arty people who like art films, it did not really connect. It certainly didn't connect with me. And a lot of people that I know, they sort of think it was a joke. It was sort of the weakness of him as a director was very much very much apparent through much of The Fountain. He really started to take off with Wrestler. Obviously, Rec Room is a classic. Everybody loves Rec Room. But Wrestler was when he really got a lot of accolades and a lot of awards for that film. And Black Swan is when I think he really crossed over into the popular consciousness and mass audiences that did very, very well. A lot of people who wouldn't normally see one of his films went to go see that. And then he kind of screwed it up a little bit with Noah. It seemed way too ambitious. His hubris seemed to get the best of him there. And Mother is just a tripling down on that. And it's really going to hurt his career, I think, a lot. Like, he's going to have trouble getting larger budget films. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the guy who did Book of Henry. What was his name? The guy who was supposed to do Star Wars. And then, so he gets announced that he's doing Star Wars. Although he did another really decent movie. Oh, he did Jurassic World, right? So dude does Safety Not Guaranteed or something in some art film. Then he does Jurassic World. I think I'm with the right guy. And then he gets the new Star Wars. But then he releases his own film, Book of Henry, and it's so atrociously bad that I think they took away Star Wars from him, which is, I don't know, I feel like that's really sad, man. Like, you can't give somebody Star Wars and take it away. That's just like so awful. And anyway, I think Darren's going to be in a position like that soon with how bad this is. It's not even just the performance, it's the reaction to it. As someone who gives a lot of leeway to more artistic and experimental directors, I thought it was really trashy, and I thought it was very poorly done. There's a way you could have done this film, right? And I'm not gonna spoil the whole thing, whatever, but like, you could have done this film as for like $5 million, probably less, maybe $3 million. Get unknown actors who are very good. There's tons of acting talent in this country that goes untapped. Find some great stage actors, get them to do this film. You could have the same message, the same intensity, and I think it would have connected a lot better with people, and I think it may have been a lot better film. There was something about the talent involved in this that it really skewed the movie. And I don't think Ed Harris or Michelle Pfeiffer are going to be hurt. They're obviously very well established. Javier Bardem, I think, is fine. He always plays weirdos, so this sort of fits into his model. I think Darren and I think Jennifer Lawrence is just going to be really hurt by this. It was so off-brand. I hate to use that language, but it's at the end of the day, it's a business. Publicity is a business. Celebrity is a business. Film is a business. I like the art side of all that stuff too, but like, there is a huge business side to this, and she hurt her brand with this movie. And Paramount look like absolute fucking idiots on how they are to blame at the end of the day. Aronofsky is going to do whatever he wants to do because he's an experimental filmmaker, and he has no self-limiting power whatsoever. Jennifer Lawrence, I think she's dating him, so like maybe that had something to do with her doing this film. I don't know. She made a very poor decision doing this film, but I think Paramount more than anybody takes the full blame. They not only green-lighted a script and a movie that was, I believe, well over 30 million, I think about $30 million in a production budget, which is not a small amount, right? But more importantly, I think they said yes to these actors. And I think that was just, the problem is the moment they said yes to Jennifer Lawrence, it changes the entire product, right? It's no longer an art film. It can't be. It's Jennifer Lawrence. She's like the number one actress in the United States right now, maybe even the world. So you can no longer be a quiet art film that you play in New York and Los Angeles. That ups the budget significantly. She gets like $15 million a film. Obviously, that probably didn't happen here, but it goes from like kind of a smaller project to a big project. And it shifted all the expectations that this is a big film. This needs to be a wide release. And that was never the case. Never the case. And Paramount made that mistake. That's on them. Obviously other people made mistakes too, but it just, I mean, just a real train wreck. You will not see a cinema score of F for a while from a movie with like a big name in it. Like smaller films will get an F, like smaller horror films. It's because they're awful. But like the number one movie star in the world and the cinema score F, they even changed the poster on Rotten Tomatoes to Javier Bardem from Jennifer Lawrence. I guarantee you the publicist, Jennifer Lawrence's publicist, made her do it. I mean, it's a total debacle. What let's take a step back a bit and sort of stop shitting all over the film, which it's not really a terrible film. It was just never meant for mass market consumption. And that was a terrible, huge business mistake by Paramount. But besides that, what's there to learn from this, right? One, don't do bait and switches with audiences. They hate that. That's happened multiple times in the last couple of years on the horror spectrum. That sounds weird. It Comes at Night was marketed as an almost paranormal kind of like, well, what comes at night? Like some sort of monster, some sort of ghost. Hint, no. That's not what happens at all. I won't spoil anything for you, but like the movie plays much more like a straightforward horror thriller dystopia film than it does like a paranormal ghost movie about being in the woods at night. That got like a D+, I want to say, in CinemScore. I guess I could look it up. Yeah. Oh, D. Ouch. I mean, that's off the cliff in terms of a CinemScore. The Witch was another example. Keep in mind, I love both of these films. I think The Witch is one of the best horror films made in the last 30 years. But it did not do well either on CinemaScore. And so there's been a lot of sort of, It Follows is also an example. I think it didn't really connect with the mass audiences very well. So there's something about the horror movie genre that maybe tends to lend itself to mismarketing. That may be also an issue with the way the horror genre has been for the last 20 years or so. Starting with Scream in 1996, 1997, horror became very much a cookie cutter product, right? And you basically had, I know I always talk about horror movies on this podcast, but I can't help myself. You had Scream, which was the slasher brand or path or little snow globe subgenre. Probably is the appropriate term, not snow globe. But you know what I mean? It's like a closed off world that has specific rules and creates audience expectations. And that's what we're talking about here. Then you had found footage, which Blair Witch came out in 1999, essentially started. So you have like Scream starting this sort of slasher renaissance. Then you have Blair Witch starting the found footage renaissance, which has lasted, till now with the Paranormal Activity movies, but that's certainly they have tapered off. And then you had the torture porn era, which I wonder which one's really started that. I'll have to look it up real quick. I don't know I guess it was Saw maybe. Saw came out in 2002. Oh, 2004. When did Hostel come out? Sorry, I'm like doing research as I'm talking. 2006. So I'm just gonna guess it started with Saw. So the middle of last decade. It's been 13 years since Saw came out. How weird is that? So you had those three paths. You had slasher, you had found footage, and then you had torture porn. And those were the three sort of subgenres that mass audiences would accept for horror movies. Now, sure, there was some like the Grudge remake and the sort of the Japanese sort of subgenre too was kind of big for a while. But those were the acceptable sort of genres. Starting with It Follows a couple of years ago, that has all changed, right? And I talked a lot about this on the It Special podcast. But basically the rules started to change a little bit and the genre was being experimented with a lot. And it was a hearkening back to the 1970s sort of horror naturalism movement in the United States. I'm talking Wes Craven, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that stuff, right? So, Mother, how do you fit Mother into that slot? And this is why I got an F, right? Is because it doesn't fit the slasher model. It doesn't fit the torture porn model, really. It doesn't fit found footage, of course. Doesn't even fit the Japanese subgenre remake, and it doesn't really fit. It feels most connected to probably the 1970s horror golden age. But the problem is that's not mass appeal yet, right? Like It Follows, The Witch, and It Comes at Night are definitely connected back to that movement. Also, probably Raw from France. Those are all really, really tightly connected to that 1970s horror movement that was happening back then. But general audiences don't have that context for the most part, especially young people. Like the number of young people who have seen I Spit on Your Grave, the original, not the fucking remake, is like 5% maybe. So they have no concept of what horror movies were probably before Scream, right? And general audiences don't in general. So it's like they go to see Mother, it's marketed as a horror film, but it doesn't fit any of the horror film models or conceptions that they have. And that's a major problem. And it speaks to a kind of bigger problem with film and art in general. That's kind of when I'm digging deep on this one, is that audiences have a path they want to take, a narrative path that they want to take when they see a movie. American Assassin, they know what's going to happen. Dude has someone in his life get killed. He goes and takes revenge against the people that killed her. Taken, same thing. There's very specific genre conventions that audiences expect when they go in to see a movie. People who don't want that, they go and see art films. I go and see art films because I want to be surprised. I want something different. That's not what the mass culture wants or mass audiences want. They want the steps laid out the way that they expect them on the map that they have been given when they watch other movies like this, right? There's sort of like this, there is like a narrative map that is made when you watch horror films over the last 20 years. Oh, I know what's going to happen next because I saw this in I Know What You Did Last Summer. Oh, I saw it in Urban Legend. I saw it in Paranormal Activity. So it gives them an expectation going in. Mother basically took those expectations, that map that makes people feel comfortable and secure, and burned it. And the problem was, if you go in to see an art film, you expect that to happen. You expect not to know what's going on, to be confused, but you do not expect that if it's a mass wide release horror film. You just don't expect it. You want to be scared, maybe. There's nothing really scary about this movie though. But you don't want to be confused and you don't want to be confounded. I went to go see it here in Nashville, and I was really kind of excited to see how the audience was. And it was like, I went on like Sunday at like noon or something. And the audience was maybe like 12 people in the audience, maybe 16. And the reactions when this film ended were just, and I had heard this happening all over the country, but I wanted to see it for myself. And it was amazing to see it like firsthand with people right next to you. It was just like, wait, what the fuck was that? And like these people are like, Nashville's a pretty nice town. People are pretty polite and laid back. They usually just don't speak out like that. And they're just like, this is fucking trash. Like, I need to get some therapy after watching this. So, Mother basically, it confused people and it broke the rules when people weren't expecting it to break the rules. And that sounds like something that would be cool. But it's not cool for people to pay money to see a movie, and they don't expect it. If you're going to an art house film, if I'm going to the Bell Court here in Nashville, I expect something unorthodox. I expect something that's not going to meet my expectations, essentially. Something new, something different. People don't want that when they go to the movies and they pay $15. They want to see something that is entertaining. They want to see something that, ironically, is something they've seen before. That's the truth about the movies. They want to see the same story, maybe with different characters, maybe with some different colors, but they really want to see the same story over and over again. And Mother was not that story, unless you've read the Bible. Hint, hint, hint. Any event, that's sort of my my Mother rant for now. Man, I'm already at 45 minutes. Jesus, man, crazy. Or something like that. I'm like 40 minutes. Obviously I'm super excited and passionate about talking about like, especially like horror genre conventions and how people and culture responds to them. And sometimes how, when there's a misconnect, I'm thinking like, and I said this like 2 weeks ago or a week ago, I was like, this could be like Rites of Spring, the orchestra piece that made people riot, I believe in Paris, I think. That's essentially what happened here. People were up in arms because it just did not fit into their mold of what they expected to see out of this film. And that could be and is disastrous for the business side of this movie. I'm kind of guessing when its drop's going to be next weekend. I don't know. It could be really high. It could be, I'm expecting, I'm going to say 65%, which is really, 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 really high. No, fuck it. I'm going to say 68%. I think it's going to match like whatever Freddy versus Jason. I think it's going to be a total disaster. But that's, you know, the moral of the day and the sort of the concise wrap up of that long rant is don't lie to your audience. Just don't do it. They expect A, don't give them Z, essentially. And Mother's sort of paying the price for that right now. Let's get through this top 10. Let's do it. Home Again was number 4, 5.1 million. A good 40% drop. That's actually really good now that I'm thinking about it. It didn't open very high. It's at 16, almost 17 million bucks now. Had a very low budget. I think this one will probably break even once you get VOD and TV involved. I thought it might have a chance of breaking out because it's like counter programming to it. But that just didn't happen. Kind of unfortunately, I felt like it had some strong points to it, but critics really didn't like it that much. I'm just like, as a romantic comedy person, rom-com, a genre that has died over the last 5 to 6 years. I'm really fingers crossed it's coming back. And Home Again thought like it could be like a spark to do that, but it doesn't look like it. Hitman's Bodyguard is still somehow hanging in there. 3.6 million this weekend. Crazy low drop, 25% drop. Weird. Lost about 50 theaters. Per theater average is just about $1,100. Total take so far for Hitman's Bodyguard is $70 million. How does that make any sense? I don't know. Actually, I thought it was going to be higher than I'm thinking about it. I thought it was going to open at like 30 something. Or I thought it was going to open at like 40 something and didn't do that. Such a wide open August. Not a good film. It's all over the pirate sites. Not that I watched it on the pirate sites, but I watched the first like hour and I was like, I can't deal with this. It's so like cheesy and just not well done CGI. Okay, number 6 this weekend was Wind River. My parents are actually at the Wind River reservation as we speak. They're out there doing a little trip, or they're nearby the Wind River reservation, I should say. 2.5 million, almost about 2.6 million actually. Fantastic drop. 18% drop. $29 million so far. The production budget was 11 million. This is becoming a big win. I don't know if it's like a big story, but it's really surprising to me that they opened this film in like late July, I want to say. And it just has just played, I guess it opened on August 4th, limited. And when it went wide on August 18th, this is just a super, like number one, it's a wonderful movie. It's one of the better movies I've seen in the last few years. So I'll give it props on the artistic side. From a business decision, Weinstein Company, I don't know. I think they kind of got lucky. I don't think they have a lot of money anymore. They're kind of running dry. The tap's running dry. And I think they're just like, let's put this out in August because it's like there's nothing else coming out. It's going to get lost in the fall probably. I don't think there's a better end sort of point for this movie than over $30 million. Like, I just don't see how it does any better than 30 million bucks. So I think they really hit a home run. Either it was luck or just really great foresight to put it out in August. A movie that takes place in winter in August, and it's just like super dark, but really super brooding, but like, oh, so good. So good. So Wind River is definitely a big win for everybody involved, especially Tyler Sheridan, because that is, I believe it is his debut movie. And obviously he wrote a lot of great movies like Sicario and Hell or High Water. Hell or High Water, I think, is the good comp for this one, which I think it's past already now. Peter Berg was a producer on this. I have such mixed feelings about him. And anyway, Wind River doing really well. I think a big win. 7 this weekend was Annabelle Creation, still sticking around. I don't know how, but it has a 40% drop. These movies from August are just like, they're not, I guess there's just nothing else out. Per theater average is in its 6th weekend, $1,100. That's not bad. It's just about to break $100 million, which before it came out would have been considered a big milestone for a horror film. Like the $100 million mark is like, wow, you're in like the upper echelon. But it's just blown everything out of the water. So I think it changes the game for horror films. Number 8 was Leap, another Weinstein film. I believe it is a French animation film. Might be a guess there. 2.1 million, really good, 11% drop. Per theater average is kind of unhealthy at 900. It is surprisingly, it's made $18.7 million so far. I mean, that's not terrible for a film like that. I don't think they expected to make anything. Number 9 this weekend was Spider-Man Homecoming. Talk about not going away. 1.8 million, a 7% drop. How is it dropping 7%? Like it just my mind is not fathoming its legs here. It's late legs. $1,300 per theater in its 11th weekend. It's just like it's made $330 million. Wow. I mean, like, there's not much more you can say about that film doing that well. We know when it opened, I was trashing it constantly because it was just dropping so horribly in the beginning. It opened pretty low, but it's really just hung in there very, very well to end up. I guess, is it approaching a 3x multiplier? No, it's definitely not approaching a 3x multiplier, I don't think, right? 351 would be a 3x multiplier. I don't think it's going to get there, but the fact that it's even approaching anywhere close to that is a big win. Dunkirk was number 10, 1.3 million. Also a great job, 30%. About $900 per theater now, so it's kind of getting to the point where it's going to get kicked out. 185 million bucks. Another big win. A lot of big wins. A lot of big surprising wins. Spider-Man was a win at the end of the day. I thought it was kind of a mediocre performance in the beginning or even a loss, but it's come around to be a win. Dunkirk's a win. The Emoji Movie is a win. Wind River, Annabelle, Hitman's Bodyguard. The losses I see so far when I'm looking over like the top 10, top 15. Mother's not a poor performance. Home Again's a pretty poor performance. Not necessarily kind of a flop because the budget was so low, but like I think, you know, they definitely wanted to make more than they're making now. Leap was kind of a throwaway movie, so I wouldn't really call it a loss. Emoji Movie's definitely a win. Lucky Logan's, I think, definitely on the loss end of things. And the winner for the lowest per theater average, with over 1,000 active theaters, would be The Dark Tower with $614 per theater. It is just about to cross, and must have crossed today, probably the $50 million mark, which is what it should have opened at 7 weeks ago. What a disaster. What else is going on? Oh yeah, Wonder Woman's about to approach its 4x multiplier. I'm looking at it now. That's looking great. I think that's mostly it. The only other thing maybe to talk about would be there's a limited release this weekend. Brad Status, Ben Stiller movie. Luke Wilson's in it. Jenna Fisher's in it. Michael Sheen. What else has he been in? I feel like he's been in something big recently. Now I gotta look. Oh, he was in. God, I feel like it was in Paper Planes, but I could have made that up. He was in Passengers. Okay, maybe I have no idea who this person is, to be honest with you. So this is the Annapurna Pictures. They put out Detroit. This is another huge loss for them. Opened on 4 theaters. I'm guessing New York, maybe Los Angeles. Only 22,000 per theater. That's not good at all for a movie like this. So, God, man, I saw the trailer of this and actually it looks kind of good. I just don't understand why they didn't market it at all. Like there was zero marketing for this film. It's really strange that they just said, screw it. Like we're not even going to try. This is going nowhere. It's literally going to go nowhere. In any event, that is sort of the rundown for the weekend. The big story is it's overperforming even in its second weekend. It's like the monster of this late summer now into fall. It's going to be the story, I think, for the next few weeks. Mother's an absolute epic disaster, as I talked about. American Assassin, kind of middling performance. And the rest we talked about. So let's talk a little bit about next weekend. or sort of the weekend coming up here in a few days. Friend Request is coming out, a movie that basically has had zero marketing. I've only seen trailers for it in the last couple, I guess the last 2 times I've been to the movies I saw a trailer for it, so it's just in the last couple of weeks. I get confused with that Polaroid movie coming out with the photo and whatever. Just pointless horror film. Entertainment Studios is the distributor. I don't know who that is. I don't even know who are they. What are these movies? I guess they're a brand new distributor, and this is their first movie. It looks like very strange, very, very strange. So that just bodes incredibly poor for this film. So I'm thinking to put on basically 2,500 screens. It would be lucky to hit 3,000 per theater. I would say 7.6 million. I'm gonna say probably about 5. Let's say like 5.5 million on that one. There's 2 really big films coming out, right? So screw Friends Request, who cares? Not a big movie. Kingsman: The Golden Circle, the sequel to The Kingsman, which I guess that come out last year. Did they already do a sequel to that? That's crazy. 3,900 theaters. I honestly have no idea what this one's gonna do. The first one opened in the 30s. Its Rotten Tomato score is not great. It's sitting at 58% in Rotten Tomatoes. A lot of people want to see it though. The original did pretty darn well. I had a nice big multiplier too. So what if all those people are going to show up? If all those people are going to show up, you're talking probably in the 40s, right? Let's say it does like 45 million. Let's see what the per theater average would be on that. You're looking at about $11,500 per theater. That seems really high to me. I don't know. I'm not really excited about this movie. I wasn't really excited about the first one. Not that I should let my personal feelings get in the way, but something just seems so like dull about these films. Like they're just like, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to connect with a super wide audience now that it has done so well. It might take some of the oxygen out of the room. Plus, all the parents are going to take their kids to go see Lego Movie, the ninja version, which also looks pretty poor. Let's say it does $9,000 per theater, which I think is a fair number, to be honest with you. You're looking at 35 million bucks. I think that seems like a pretty accurate guess, about 35 million. Although there's a part of me in my gut that says this could do a little bit of a floppage. And let's say it does something like 6,000. Did I just do 6,000? Didn't I? Oh, no, I didn't. If it drops into the 20s, that's not good. Not a good performance. I got to check out the production budget on this real quick. They don't list it, but it seemed like it was really high. Yeah, this is definitely got to get into the 30s to be successful. If it does not get into the 30s, it will be problems. You might even call it a flop. Lego Movie. This one's kind of an interesting one. I don't want to talk about too long though, because it's been going on for a while now. The Lego series is interesting. When the first movie came out back in 2014, I don't think it was expected to do very well. I remember tracking it with all the box office nerds, and we're like, oh, it's probably it's gonna flop. Like, who wants to see a Lego Movie? It turned out to be a very well done, well written film. Very well written, super fun. Opened at about 69 million bucks, 3.7 multiplier, which is great. No, even if it's a children's film, they tend to be higher multipliers. It's still a very, very good performance. Ended at about 258 million bucks total overall. So when the Batman movie was coming out, 3 years later now, which came out earlier this year, you would expect something. I would expect something a lot higher, not a ton higher in terms of the opening, but I was thinking like 70, 80 million bucks. I guess I'm an idiot because it opened at 53 and only did 175. And so its multiplier, I can't do mental math, I'm sorry. It was 3.3, which isn't terrible, but not super fantastic. I don't know what this one's going to do. I honestly, you got It's Out, obviously a different audience. You have Kingsman out, I think, is a different audience. But I almost feel like it's a children's film. There hasn't been a lot of children's films recently. So it's going to take up that audience, but it's not going to have that spillover effect like the first Lego movie did. And the Batman movie didn't either. And that is people who want to go see a movie, they've got a couple of really good options. And I think that there's a lot of people that if Kingsman wasn't coming out, they'd go see the Lego movie. They're not going to see that now. They're going to go see Kingsman because that's probably what they really want to see, something like that. And honestly, the ninja theme of this one just seemed pretty boring to me. Didn't really stand out at all. My guess it's going to open below Batman. I'm going to say in the 40s, maybe high 40s would make sense to me. But it's going to be a crowded weekend, huh? It's getting crowded again, which is fun. That August was super, super rough. And so you got this weekend, a lot of that stuff coming out. The weekend after, you have American Made, which apparently is very good. Tom Cruise action movie, crime thriller. Flatliners remake, which is going to bomb. We all know that, but it's going to make enough to like probably make a profit because it costs like $2 to make. And then a couple of like no-name films that are getting wide releases. And then you have Blade Runner. I forgot Blade Runner is coming up, man. Like Blade Runner to me is going to be like the coolest movie ever. I love Blade Runner, the original. I love everything about it. And the new one, I have no idea how this new one's going to do. I don't know if like there's a lot of other super nerdy sci-fi people that are going to go see this, or if it's like the name and recognition is just beyond its actual popularity, which is possible. Then you have The Mountain Between Us. I think that's going to break out, to be honest with you. And then My Little Pony is also coming out. And like I said, it's nonstop. Happy Death Day is on the 13th. I don't know, The Foreigner, the Jackie Chan movie is coming out the 13th. And then it's just nonstop. I mean, you got Geostorm on the 20th. You got Snowman on the 20th. You got Boo 2 on the 20th. The new Jigsaw Saw movie on the 27th. Suburbicon's coming out then. Suburbicon actually has a pretty good date now that I'm looking at it. There's nothing really else around it that's playing that's like that movie. A really good move by them to put it out then. I don't think it's going to do well. It's fucking Paramount. What the hell do they know what they're doing? Anyway, all right, so that's your show for, I think, this week. I don't think I'm going to do a preview show to talk about the new releases coming out this weekend. But I will be back next week. Thanks for listening, guys. This has been the Wildline Podcast.